Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We're thrilled to have you here. We've got a great guest lineup. Chesney Leafblad, who's the Chief Deputy Assessor of Warren Township in Lake County, is going to be with us talking about some best practices. And we're just thrilled to have her with us. A couple notes for you. Of course, IPAI staff continues to work from home during this time. So if you ever need anything at all from us, best way to contact us is through the website, going to ipaiEducation.org and clicking on that contact page. Another thing to note, if you ever need anything at all, you can leave us a voicemail. We do call and check those on a regular basis, but again, the best way to get in touch with us is through the website. If you have any questions as we're going through today, feel free just to comment on this broadcast itself, and we'll be able to answer those as we're going through this. A couple quick programming notes for you. Coming up on May 14th, next week, we're going to have Brandon Harris from Bruce Harris & Associates. He's Bruce Harris & Associates Director of Sales and Marketing, and Brandon's going to be talking to us about changes in GIS within the assessment world. On May 21st, Ellen Berkshire from Barrows Berkshire, also an IPAI instructor and course author, and Jeff Lee, who is the Leafblad Township Assessor, are going to be joining us to talk about valuation of commercial properties in the time of a pandemic. And then finally, right now on May 28th, we have Wendy Ryerson scheduled for us. Wendy was a longtime instructor for the IPAI. She now sits on our board of directors and is chair of our education committee. Wendy also is the Lee County Chief County Assessment Officer. And Wendy is going to be chatting with us about the CIAO Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct that was rolled out last year. So we've got some great programs coming up for you as we move throughout the month of May. With that said, let's go ahead and bring Chesney in so she can join us. Hi, Chesney.
Hi.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to join us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just a quick reminder to everybody, if you have questions as we're going through this, go ahead and comment on this live broadcast on Facebook, and we'll get those tossed out and do our best to answer them as we're going through all this. So Chesney, how are things going for you? Are you in the office? You working at home? What's life like these days?
Yes, I'm spending some time in the office, some time working at home. It's going to be pretty busy here for most of us with tax bills going out this week.
Right. That's a pretty common theme around the state right now.
It was going to be busy before the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
Now it adds another really interesting variable to this year.
That's a good way to put it, as an interesting variable. Well, thanks again so much for being with us today. Part of what we wanted to chat with you about is just sort of best practices, working in this environment, especially when you're working from home and you're working maybe split shifts with other people who are in your office. As a government employee or an elected official or an appointed official, assessors and their staffs, truly are, public servants, right? You're there to serve the public good. And part of doing an effective job with that is being a good communicator. But why is that really so important, especially at a time like this? Why is good communication so important for not only the staff and the officials, but as well as the public?
So before I answer that question, I have a question for you, Josh, and
Okay.
I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it or not.
Okay.
I'll give you 3 guesses. What job did I have when I graduated high school?
Oh gosh. Okay, I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to guess that. Did you work in an assessment office?
Well, that was in high school, and that was after high school, but not at the time of graduation.
Okay.
Try again.
I'm gonna guess that you were a server at a restaurant.
Nope, I've never been a server anywhere. Anyone who knows me intimately knows that I am somewhat clumsy. So that's a no. You've got one more try.
Okay, all right. Didn't work in the assessment office when I graduated. Didn't work a server. Gosh. I'm gonna guess that you were. Well, those are my two. I'm gonna guess that you worked maybe you worked at a store of some kind. You were a clerk of some kind, providing customer
That's
service.
interesting. I've also never worked retail.
Oh no! 3 for 3. Shoot. Okay.
3 for 3. So actually, at the time that I graduated high school, I worked for Merlin's Muffler and Brake.
Oh wow.
Yes, I was the receptionist, cashier. They actually taught me how to do oil changes. I tried my hand a couple times at that. What I learned from that job is they actually sent me to a customer service training day. And there is a script that everyone uses when they answer the phone at a Merlin's Muffler and Brake. It's a friendly hello and how can I help you, and giving your name. And so if you want to, you can try it out this afternoon, but call a few different Merlin's Muffler and Brakes, and I guarantee you that the answer will be the same, just with a different name stuck in there.
Wow.
And the reason that they do that is because they want to have consistent messaging to their customers, to their constituents.
Sure.
Those of us that are in the public service sector, sometimes we forget that we could learn a thing or two from people that are trying to earn people's business. We do not have to go look for business. People are going to call us no matter what we do. But in terms of how we answer those calls and the effort that we put forward to give consistent information to avoid miscommunication, can really pay off in the long run. It can make people feel more confident with what we're telling them. And it also, it kind of gives the gleam of professionality to what we're doing. No matter how well you assess property, if you aren't able to communicate what you do and why you do it to a person that calls your office, their view of what you do is going to be skewed by the level of customer service they receive when they call, email your office.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very important that you have consistent messaging. We're going to talk about ways that you can do that. And before we get into this, I want to be very clear. These are not my ideas. I'm taking ideas that I've taken from so many knowledgeable people that I've met throughout my career in the assessment industry. And I'm just kind of serving them to you on a silver platter. But nothing I'm going to tell you is an original Chesney idea. I'm giving you a lot of other people's ideas.
Either way, we're going to gobble them up. So that's
absolutely.
That's Chesney, one of the great things about you is, I mean, you do have a long family history in the assessment industry, in one way, and of course your father, right, as well as I believe both of your grandfather as well, right? We're all
my grandfather, my mom.
Your mom, yeah.
She had a short stint.
And the family history, as well as your current involvement with the IPAI, with the work you do in your own township. I know you worked in the Kane County office for a while. You have these great relationships from folks around the state and around the industry that's really allowed you to cultivate some of these great best practices. And we're thankful that you're here to talk through some of them with us.
And I'm thankful for all of those relationships that I have been able to cultivate. And I do plan on stressing throughout this presentation how important it is to network and build those relationships. And the stronger our networking and support is throughout the state of Illinois, the more of a unified front we can put forward, and the better decisions we can make and the better processes we can implement throughout the state.
Absolutely. So, right now with COVID going on, things are kind of disheveled, right? I mean, some folks are totally working at home. Some offices maybe only have one person a day going in, or maybe I know some of the county offices are doing split shifts. Some folks are working, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or some Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, some things like that. It's so nice, right, when you're all together with everybody that you work with. If you have a question or a constituent calls in and asks something and they're not exactly sure what the standard answer is, They can just, shout over and say, hey, what do you tell someone about this? But it's so much harder to do that now, right? So
Absolutely.
how do you combat that?
And one thing that is very important even before this happened, but has kind of increased in terms of its importance. Is that a word?
It is now.
It is now. It's that you develop these materials and this information, and that you make sure everyone that's in your office is on the same page. One way to do that is to have written Q&A type of materials available to your staff, available on a website to give information directly to constituents. Another thing that you can do, there's a lot of questions all of us know that we get asked consistently in the assessment industry. Another way that you can really utilize your resources the most efficiently and the most quickly is to have email templates, or some would call it canned emails.
Yeah.
There's questions you get often, how do I file an appeal? Can I file an appeal? Do I have my exemption? Your answers to a lot of those questions are going to be the same. Maybe there's a couple things you have to fill in. If you have that information already typed up and saved, you could save it as a template through Outlook email, where you could actually go in and use a template. You could just save it in a Word document and copy and paste it back into your email, answering those questions to people. When you do that, you know that what you're sending out has been proofread. You're not going to have typos.
Right.
It's going to be communicated clearly. There's a lot of people in assessment offices that are very good at what they do, but the time it takes to sit down and kind of type out an email, maybe they're not that great with words, or maybe they're too impatient. But there's other people who are really gifted in terms of explaining things and writing things out in a way that's really approachable to people at the receiving end of those emails. If one person writes this beautiful email explaining homestead exemptions in Illinois, why not share that email with other offices and other people? They can take that information and just make it their own and send it out. It's faster, it's more efficient, and then you have consistent messaging, and you're using the words that are best able to explain the topic.
Yeah. It's easy too, right? If you do that, to include links in there, right, that may go to, either something on your website, or maybe the county assessment website, or some other resources that may be out there that folks might need.
Yeah. So as an example, I'm up here in Lake County, and all of our assessment complaints were filed online as of last year. So I created a document that kind of walked people through that online appeal process. And so if somebody would email me about, how do I file an appeal? I could attach that to the email. Within the email, I had verbiage telling them what the filing deadline is for our township. Any email I send out during our complaint period gives the filing deadline. So nobody could come back and say, well, I didn't know what the deadline was, or I was emailing Chesney, do I get an extension? Every single email I send out has the filing deadline at the bottom of it. And then it would take me, I'm going to say 30 seconds, and it might not even be that long, to reply to someone with that information in there. The more quickly you respond to emails, the people feel that you're more on top of it. They feel that they matter. You're taking the time to respond to them right away. As a best practice, when we're really busy here and I might not be able to answer a question immediately, something that maybe would take a little more time to get through, what I'll do in that case is I have a canned email response that says, I've received this information. Please expect a reply from me within 2 business days. And so on and so forth. So then you've got that immediate touch where you're responding to them right away, even though you don't have the information, but then you're also giving yourself a deadline and giving them an expectation of when you're going to follow up with them. It makes the process more smooth, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And just to give everyone a little bit of context geographically, right? If you're not familiar, you're in Lake County, and that's, if I go to my wood map on the wall, that's going to be right up here in the corner, right near the Lake County touches the Wisconsin border.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are bordered by Wisconsin on the north and Cook County on the south.
Right in between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's probably not a hard drive for you to go north and hit the Mars Cheese Castle, right?
It's not. That's pretty close. I'm in the northern part of Lake County too, so that's not a hard drive.
Even closer, yeah. Food, right, that's a priority, especially during a pandemic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Chesney, when you put these templates together, and whether they're in Outlook or you've got them stored like in Word on the server where everyone can access them, do you just send exactly what's in the template every time, or are there times when maybe like you customize, a paragraph or parts of it for people, and how do you do that and still kind of keep your messaging?
Right. So there's sometimes the email will just be exactly what the email is. But for example, if I'm working out a settlement on an appeal, what I have is a template that has some spots where I will fill in the pertinent information. So for example, a spot where I enter the PIN number of the property, the address of the property, the proposed settlement, what that is per square foot. And so those items within those emails that I'm going to adjust based on the circumstance, for myself personally, I leave those in blue font. So when I go in and I open the email, I know everything in blue font is what I need to fill in specific to the file that I'm looking at.
Go right to that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, your eyes go right to that. And I leave it that way when I send it to them because that's the information. Everything else is kind of the boilerplate, fill in the blanks. That's actually, the assessed value, the PIN number. That's the information they're actually looking for. So it makes it easier for them on the receiving end as well.
Have you within your office or talked to anyone who has used either templates or basic boilerplate messaging for phone conversations as well when folks call up and they have a common question?
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a lot of people that have that type of information. We actually put together a document, Amanda Paget and myself, through the IPAI when we developed the residential complaints at the local level course. And so you can see here, I'll just show you, we put together like a Q&A. So for example, if someone comes in the office or they call on the phone and they say, my assessment went up 5%, does that mean my tax bill will go up 5%? We've got a canned answer here. The answer is the assessed value is only one part of the equation. Ultimately, your tax bill will be determined by subtracting any exemptions you qualify for and multiplying the remaining value by the tax rate. Unfortunately, the tax rate will not be determined until just before the bills are generated and mailed out. That's just one example of one question. So this can be something that is really great to have to develop an answer, a question and answer document when you have new employees and you're training new employees. If you think about it, it takes 2 years before you get through a full tax cycle.
Sure.
2 years.
Yeah.
And if those 2 years are within the middle of a quad, you've got a new thing coming during your first quad when you're new to an assessment office. So if you look at it that way, it takes at least 4 years before you really experience what it's like to work through this assessment field any given year. So you have these new hires coming in, and until they have the experience, until they can speak clearly from memory, it's really empowering for them, for you to give them a script, so to speak. Once you know the script and once you know how to answer these questions, then you don't need it. You don't need it. But when something new comes up, like the pandemic, are you changing your office policies? That type of information, it can be a helpful reminder, shift this out to the people in your office, because this new issue, they have maybe a little less a little lower of a level of being comfortable with handling it. So maybe they would benefit from just having the canned answer to look at if they draw a blank, or, you know, if they get someone that's pretty intimidating on the phone, so they could answer them a little bit more confidently.
Yeah.
Because if you do not sound like you know what you're talking about when you answer the question, they are not going to believe that you know what you're talking about when you answer.
Right. And just a reminder to folks, if you have questions that you'd like to ask, go ahead and comment on the stream, on the video stream here, and we'll do our very best to get those answered as we're going through all of this.
And so some of the things that is also important to remember, you know, outside of just a script for what to say, it's really nice to have other information available at your fingertips. So my boss, Charlie Mullen, he's really great. He puts together a lot of information about the tax rates every year. We're in a township assessor's office. We don't handle the tax rates, but having that information available and being able to speak knowledgeably about it and knowing exactly who handles that at the county to send people that have a deeper inquiry about it too is really helpful. We find it's helpful to have the contact information for all the taxing bodies. Everyone who works in an assessment office knows sometimes people aren't upset with their assessment. Sometimes they're upset with the tax bill itself.
Yeah.
Whether or not we handle that, we should be able to let them know who they need to talk to if they have a problem with an exemption, or who they need to call if they need a building permit based on their address. So having all this other information available can be really helpful for people, because the most frustrating thing when you call a government body or even a company in the corporate world is to be shifted around from person to person to person. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people don't know where to start, and for some reason they start at their assessor's office, their township assessor's offices. And if we can give them the immediate next person they need to speak with, instead of, for example, I took a call this morning and he wanted to know where to get a building permit for his patio. If I just told him, call the county, well, that's fine. Then he'd have to call the main line at the county, right, and that person might not even know the right department. I was able to let him know, based on your unincorporated address, you need to call the Building and Zoning Department of Lake County, and then I gave him the phone number. Yeah. He was very happy.
And that took you, you know, what, 10 extra seconds maybe, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, very, very little time. And so I find that that's very helpful as all. People sometimes don't trust, you know, the man, and they sometimes view us that way. So it's my goal as a local public servant to say, hey, I'm right here with you. There's no secrecy here. We're transparent, and I'm here to help you. You know, if I don't know the answer, I'll do my best to find it for you, if it, you know, at all pertains to property values and something that we deal with at this level.
We have a question that has just come in from Nick. If we need any clarification on this, you know, we'll get it. But Nick asks, how is residential permit work done? Normally, a field person goes out and knocks on doors. How will this be done? How will this be done during this pandemic?
That's really interesting. This is going to pose a very, very different situation depending on what type of area you are within the state of Illinois. Yeah. There are quite a few jurisdictions in Illinois where permitting is not required. And so that's going to look really different there. For us, we do have the benefits of permits being required. And I'd say that that's an issue we haven't fully accomplished. You know, we don't have a definite determination about that. One thing that we might be willing to do, and this could be controversial, but we have some new houses that are going up. We have some basic information on them. As opposed to trying to go in these houses is, you know, contacting the builder, and that's in a situation where this was done as a subdivision, going off the plans. We, in our jurisdiction, we already do not go into homes to measure finished basements. So in that case, if someone takes out a permit for a finished basement or a plumbing remodel, we leave a door hanger and ask them to give us a call, and then we take that information from them over the phone. So moving forward, there may be things that we all handle a little differently this year, and it might just be for this year. We might have to make exceptions. We might have to do the best that we can, and next year might be different. Next year might go back to the status quo, but we can't pretend that we can handle things the same way now that we could last year or that we might be able to next year. So, you know, being in contact with the property owner is something, you know, that some jurisdictions might be willing to try just as a substitute for this year. You could always verify characteristics next year when you can get back out and actually put a tape on it.
It probably would be helpful too, you know, if you're trying to feel out, boy, how are we going to do this, you know, maybe in my township or with my county. That's also a great opportunity to reach out to neighboring townships, right, or even neighboring counties.
Yeah.
And talk with some of them who may be dealing with similar issues.
And that actually leads me into another point that I wanted to make. You know, I talk about all this information. Great news. You don't have to start from scratch. We have some busybodies here in Illinois. Two different places, two different resources I want to give you right now. The first is Jeff Lee. He is the Lake Villa Township Assessor here in Lake County. And he always writes very, very well-written articles, informative articles about assessment process, the tax bill process, and he shares them with the rest of us in Lake County, and we all use it. And I did get permission from Jeff to share his website. So if you want to develop some of this material, you can take a look at his website. There's going to be some nuances between jurisdictions depending on where you are, but this gives you a great starting point. You don't have to start from scratch. So Jeff Lee's website is V as in Victor, assessor.org, lvassessor.org. And if you choose informative articles, you can see some information he's put together there. Not all of it will apply outside of Lake County, but it gives you a great place to start. Another place that you could also go to look for some information, some really detailed information for quite a few questions that have actually been brought forward by property taxpayers would be the King County Chief County Assessment Officer, Mark Armstrong. And so that website is kingcountyassessments.org. And so what he has there is he's written kind of an advice column format. It's called Ask Mark. So if you look at Ask Mark, what he's done is he's shared a question that was posed by a member of the public or some constituent, and then he's answered that question. So you could look through there, and anything that you like there, you can take that as well and use it.
And those are assessment related questions. People aren't writing him in like they do Dear Abby.
I wouldn't rule it out. He's a very wise man. There may be a few off topic. If not, I will be asking an off topic question of him next week. We will add that. Another great place to look is some of the IPAI classes. I already mentioned that we've developed some Q&As for the office, for the residential complaints class.
Yeah.
There's some information that would be relevant to this topic in the office management class. And the other thing is that it's just really important to collaborate. Like we talked about networking earlier in our conversation, some great ways that you can collaborate based on whether or not you're in a township or a county would be to look at, you know, the associations that are available. Your Township Assessors Association, if you have one. If you're at the county level, the County Assessment Officer Association. When you take schooling, IPAI education schooling, join some of the associations. You know, I'm involved with a number of them. The CIAO Association, they always have networking events that are great. You can meet people from different jurisdictions. You can see what they're doing to handle different issues. And you never know, you might have an issue arise at some point in the future that you would have the benefit of a contact from that you made at one of these functions.
Absolutely.
Also, the Illinois chapter of the IAAO, we're a pretty new chapter as well. And they also put together events that you could be involved with, and education. It all boils down to education. The more educated you are, the more time you spend networking and talking to different people, the better able you are to serve your constituents.
And we hear from students too who will say, when I was in this class, maybe in Rockford, let's say, and I was out on break and I got talking with somebody about an issue within my jurisdiction, got their business card, and I was able to call them when I got back to my office and dive into a much deeper conversation. Someone they normally would not have connected with because they, were out socializing, during a break time or during a planned social event. So, those are great opportunities.
Absolutely. And I just have to say, for me personally, I absolutely love our Illinois assessors. I've had the benefit of, having worked here for a while. I had contacts of people that were friends of my father's. I've made my own very dear friends through this industry. And also with teaching for the IPAI, I get to meet new faces every time I teach a new class. And there are just really, really, really great people that make up this field. And you're missing out if you don't connect with them.
Absolutely.
Because if they can't help you, you might be able to help them, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Chesney, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share with us about this topic?
No. I mean, I think I talked for a while now. Well, I think I hit that 30-minute mark pretty perfectly. We started about 5 minutes late.
You've been
I think
great.
The world has had enough of me. I'm going to go back and get to work.
Not possible, but hey, thank you again so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your experiences and how they can benefit others. And
yes, and I'm really excited for the next 2 sessions that you have lined up for late morning with Josh Barnett.
Yeah, this is just to remind everyone, next week, May 14th, Brandon Harris from Bruce Harris and Associates is going to be with us talking about changes in GIS within the assessment industry. 2 weeks from now, May 21st, Thursday at 11 a.m., we're going to have attorney Ellen Berkshire from Barrows Berkshire and Jeff Lee, who Chesney had just talked about. Jeff is the Lakeville Township Assessor, and they're going to be chatting about challenges with valuation of commercial properties during this current pandemic and post-pandemic time. And then May 28th, Wendy Ryerson, Lee County CCAO and the IPAI's Education Committee Chair, is going to join us to be talking about the CIAO Code of Conduct. So be sure to mark those down. But Chesney, thanks again so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
We haven't had any other questions come in, but appreciate everyone taking the time also to tune in and to join us. And we look forward to seeing all of you again next week, and hopefully soon actually in the classroom at some training events.
Fingers crossed.
That's right. Yes, fingers crossed. Everyone have a great week.
Bye.